Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have Mason on the line with us. We're going to talk archery with him. Before we get started, though, I want to let everybody know uh, there's several ways you can listen to and watch this podcast. If you want to just listen to the podcast, you can do that wherever you get your normal podcast from, but also go to audible.com and you can listen to it free there. Or some of the auto books you have to pay for, but this one's a free one. If you want to watch the video, because sometimes we show stuff that kind of nice to be able to see, you can do that on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. That's the name of my YouTube channel, as well as you can catch these live times on my profile. But probably the best place to go is go out to our Talk 101 Facebook group because we have a lot of good information out there, and these videos always get uploaded to there as well. We have archery instructors, we have bow techs, we have a lot of people that can answer a lot of your questions. And by looking at Mason's background, it looks like he's quite involved in archery.
Something like that.
Well, Mason, how about if you introduce yourself and tell our listeners and audience a little something about you?
Let's see. I'm Mason. I shoot a ton of bows. Uh, I got into archery, I think it's been 4 years ago now. A friend came over to my house because I had a big yard and he wanted to shoot his bow. And peer pressure took over. And I went out and bought a youth bow, cranked down the poundage. I had a shoulder injury when I started archery, and I think I started at about 25 pounds. Worked my way up until about 50 and went into the woods and started trying to poke animals. Um, about a year ago, I started here at Katiwi Archery as a bow tech. I had a bad experience with a poor broadhead flight my first year hunting, and I kind of dove down the rabbit hole of tuning and tinkering and making that perfect. Uh, and kind of taught myself tinkering with my own bows and some friends' bows. And then this is my local range. I came down here one day and he said he was looking for a tech. I said, I think I can fit the bill if you can fit my schedule. So we shook hands and here I am a year later, still tinkering on bows.
Yeah, what's the name of the shop again?
It's Katiwi Archery. We're in Noblesville, Indiana. It's actually a little
Okay,
north of Noblesville in Strawtown.
okay. Yeah, we'll put a link to that in the description so we can make it easier for everybody to find it and
Yeah,
grow the shop a little bit. Come in
yeah,
and see you.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
I
so
think
you've
that
been
pretty much covers the gist of my history and my archery journey so far. I shoot a ton of competitions. Nothing really notable to speak of as far as placing. I keep up with them, but definitely far from the best.
well, and we get some of those that are winning and they're in the pro class and all that, but most of us aren't going to get there because
No,
one, we don't want to put the time in to
yeah,
get good enough to go there. But like you're having fun. You go to the tournaments,
yeah.
have fun.
That's
You know,
that's all it's about for me. Having fun and getting better for when I get out in the woods this hunting season.
and that's kind of what I do is I shoot the spots just to get my skill down, and then I shoot the 3Ds so I better at hunting, and that's what I
Yeah,
do is I shoot so I can hunt, and
yeah.
besides it's fun shooting your bow.
Yeah, it is. It is. But that was the biggest part for me too, is just getting to spend more time in the woods hunting because gun season was too short, and I love being out in the woods. So the 3D stuff is just great for practicing those less than ideal shots because we've all been presented with a less than ideal opportunity in the woods. 3D lets you practice for that and see how you do.
Yeah, because you're never, when you're shooting and practicing, you're normally on a nice level ground, indoors, no wind. You can get your perfect form. When you're out hunting, though, you're never on level ground. Even if you're
Never.
standing on the ground, something's always got you off kilter a little bit there,
Yep.
or you have to bend a little bit more to get around the tree because where you're at in your tree stand, if you should have a tree stand, you might have to move around little weird places or use
Yeah.
your safety harness as a way to keep you in the tree stand while you're making that leading out shot to get around.
Yep. Yep. Especially all these guys in saddles now. Man, there's there's no footing in that some of the time. And if you do have footing, you're leaning and working and all kinds of awkward. So learning to shoot in some of those awful positions is very, very, very beneficial for the hunting season.
Yeah, that's definitely something you got to practice. All those weird
Mhm.
shots, weird angles, and remember that your form is your form. Upper body, that's your form. No matter what
Yep.
you're twisting, up, down, all those different angles. That's your form. If you alter that form, you're changing something that you shouldn't be changing.
Yep. Arrow's probably not going to land behind that pin now. Yep.
That's true. So you've only been working that shop for about a year now, then, huh?
Yep. Yep.
I imagine you've probably seen some interesting things come through. Uh, Bows that have had some problems that was a little weird. And tell us about
Definitely.
some of those that you've had come in and being new to this, how you solve some of those problems.
Oh, let's see. For me, honestly, a lot of the challenges were with the older bows because what I learned to work on was a lot of the newer Matthews stuff with the floating yokes. So for me, the biggest challenge when I first started here was really learning split yoke tuning, which for you is probably like, riding a bike. For
Yeah,
me, it was a whole different monster. Um,
yeah,
because of what I learned to tune on top hats and shims, fixed pretty much everything on a PSE or a Matthews or Hoyt. Those are about the only ones I worked on before I started in here. Working on a lot of the I'm gonna call them simpler bows, the solo cams, stuff like that was probably my biggest hurdle because it is a little more finesse that it takes to tune those. They're easier once you understand them, but uh, probably my biggest hurdle there, just being where I learned how to tune. A lot of the older stuff took me some practice and asking the boss some questions.
yeah. When you have two Y cables and a single string, it's a little bit different to tune those than it is the new ones with just one Y cable or now the floating cables that a lot of them
Yeah,
have now. And
yeah,
those are completely different the way you have to deal with those because you can't twist on the Y cable. You can twist one of them on the Y and kind of tweak things a little bit. With a
yeah.
floating one, you can twist them all you want. I'll just make it shorter.
No, it doesn't. It's gonna float where it wants to float and balance where it wants to balance. You just shim the cam where you need it.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting deal where you can just you have to do the shimming and stuff, but there you've got to take your bow apart and pull the axles out, and that's another whole challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you're putting them in there and taking them out, how do you get everything all lined up? And what I ended up doing was taking basically an axle
Oh,
had a little point on it, and then I could shove it in, and like a little like an ice pick.
okay,
You can
yeah,
put it in there and hold everything together, and as you put it back in, you kind of line it up and put them back in,
yeah,
and get everything back together like you wanted, and one of those little tricks that you would do because start pulling them out, you got to push it out because next thing you know, you're dropping all the little shims and
yep,
bushings, and they're all on the floor, and
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That that was actually probably my next biggest challenge. Um, Starting here was yeah, figuring out easier tricks for that kind of stuff. You take a bow all the way down to pieces and parts, and you got to put it all back together. You got to learn some tricks to speed up the process and make your life a little easier. And now I'm to the point where I don't even uh, like if I'm shimming it, the Matthews, I'll usually try to leave in the press just because the top hats are fairly easy to stack in there and put where you want. But elites and PSEs and Hoyts, everybody else, I pretty much just take them completely out of the press, bring it over to the counter, lay it down, and just stack everything up.
yeah,
Put that bottom limb on, put the shim on, put the cam on, put another shim on, put the limb back on, and then start putting it all back together to put back in the press, put it back in. That to me is so much easier than trying to, like you said, trying to trying to shimmy those shims in between a limb and a cam and get everything right where you want it and lined up. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, and then working with the solid limbs as opposed to the split limbs,
Oh
that's
yeah.
another whole challenge in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't get very many of those anymore. We've got a couple over here on the used rack, but we don't have very many of those come in too often.
Yeah, it's some of the older ones the nice thing about the solid limbs is if you happen to like the Y cable, back when you had the Y cables, so the floating cables, if you would
Mm.
happen to break one of the strands on the Y, you wouldn't destroy everything.
Yeah,
It could, might end up, messing up the axle or something possibly.
yeah,
But generally it wouldn't come apart. But if you had a split limb, you broke one of those, yeah, that whole limb just went.
yeah.
And that was kind of the disadvantage of the split limbs is you have when you have a failure in your string,
Mm.
that's what happens. But now with the floating ones, if that part breaks, then the whole thing goes,
It comes apart anyway.
Yeah, it's going
Yeah,
apart anyway.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot more. I feel like a lot more critical nowadays to be a lot more on top of your strings, and I don't feel like we have that issue in the industry as much anymore of people just neglecting their strings and waiting until hunting season and opening the case to find out that it blew up in their case. Or it definitely still happens, but I feel like people are a little more consistent with it nowadays.
Well, the cost of a new string is not cheap.
No, no, it's not.
They're expensive. I know you could easily when I had my shop 20 plus years ago is, you got new strings and cables, you're going to $100.
Yeah. Now we're looking too.
Yeah.
Depending on the shop. Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the shop and type of material they're using and everything else. And, what their schedule's like. And,
Yeah.
I was talking to one shop one time and their hourly rate changes the closer it gets to hunting season, the higher their hourly rate is.
I like that.
And
Honestly.
and if you want to wait till the week before hunting season and expect to get it done, you're going to pay more because that
Yeah.
means as the tech, I have to stay longer to get these out, which means you're going
Yeah.
to pay me more because now basically you're on overtime.
Yep.
And then that encourages you to bring them in earlier.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a good point.
y-
I may bring that up to the boss because I actually really like that idea. Because
yeah,
that's 100% valid.
yeah. And the nice thing when I had my shop, I made my own strings. So
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
I had a string for any bow you had. I had a string for it. You
Yeah.
only need two materials. I needed the
Yeah.
fast flight for the newer compounds, and I need the ones for the recurves and the older bows, and like Oneida's needed the older, the same material you'd use for your recurves and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and some of the older compounds you'd still use that. So the fast flight because you don't want to take a chance of messing them up, but
Yeah. Yep.
and
Yep. That
that
part
means
was,
you can come in and get a string made and out the door and
yeah. Yeah, we can get one out in about a day to 3 days, just depending on if our string guy is here. We have a guy that that's all he does. He comes in 3 to 4 days a week and builds strings all day long and sticks them on the stretcher. And when they're done, I go back and get them and put them on a bow. It's kind of incredible that we can do it like that. Most shops, most people even are, you got to order from Threads or Gas or 60X or whoever, and then you got to wait 2 weeks or during hunting season 2 months. And
yeah,
then they come in and now you still got to have the tech put them on or, do it yourself, whatever. It's still, yeah, it's kind of crazy to me to think that you can come in here and I can have you a set of strings on your bow in under a week, 3 days. Even hunting
yeah,
season, we stayed to a point this past year. I think we were about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks behind, which mid-October, that's honestly, I was pretty ecstatic about it.
yeah. Yeah, the whole point is don't wait till hunting season to get your string. Check it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to replace mine right after hunting season. That's my favorite time too.
Yeah. That's a good time to do it because then you have time for it to, get broke in and, anything set up. You've got time to get it set up. If you have to change something, and
Yep.
sometimes a new string you might have to make some changes
Yeah.
because it may
Yep.
not be exactly the same. Like it might be, quarter inch shorter or an eighth inch shorter because your old
Hmm.
string may have stretched.
Yep. A big one for me is it may not be quite the right knock fit. I may be shooting my practice knocks all year long, and then I go switching over to my lighted knocks in August or September, and now all of a sudden knock fit's not right. Well, I like to check those things over the summer. Go ahead and
Yeah.
throw 3 or 4 lighted knocks into a few arrows, and I'll shoot a few of them. Make sure there's no impact changes, differences. Make sure the knock fit's still good. That's something that I feel like a lot of people really overlook is knock fit.
Yeah. If it's too loose, it can fall off. If it's too tight, then it's hard to get in. It wears your serving and
Yeah.
all kinds of other stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's something that's just super easily overlooked for most people anyway.
So how much hunting are you able to get in?
I do quite a bit. We're closed Mondays and Tuesdays, and people complain all hunting season, why are we closed on Mondays and Tuesdays? And I'm like, well, I like to hunt too. And so does our boss. So uh we dedicate those 2 days during hunting season to those are our days to hunt. Uh, I hunt a lot of public land around here and I love it. It's a challenge. There's tons of pressure, but there's tons of deer and the big deer. Um, so I get quite a bit in. The only unfortunate part there is the hunting land is in the opposite direction of work from me. So I can't stop on the way into the shop and get an hour hunt in.
Yeah, kind of wrong direction, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Go 45 minutes that way just to turn around and drive an hour and a half this way. It wouldn't work out.
No, no, not too well on those
No.
days. But uh, so, with some of the hunts you've had in, what's been probably your most challenging hunt you've had?
So let's see. I'm pretty much self-taught. I hunted like twice when I was a kid, but didn't retain enough to matter. So, for me, it was just kind of figuring out public land and how that pressure affects those deer and how I'm going to hunt them due to that. So I know 90% of your bow hunters are going to climb up in a tree and they're going to sit there until something walks by. That didn't work well for my brain. And so my first year bow hunting, um, I was following the lead of everybody, that I talked to. Get a tree stand, get up a tree, sit still, shut up. I did that, and I did have a nice 10-point walk by. I poked him in the shoulder blade, and fletching smacked him in the cheeks. And that is where my tuning journey went. I spent 2 days out there after that, running around trying to find that deer, never found him. Blood trail dried up about 50 yards away, and I found my broken arrow. Um, and I found then that I didn't like that experience. Not the losing the deer. I didn't like that after I shot him, I couldn't just go figure out what happened. I couldn't try to circle around him, cut him off, get a second shot in. I had to get out of the tree first. So that the saddle might be an adaptation that I try out this year, but I'm a big spot and stalker. I like going and just sitting on the ground. I'll punch into some weeds. I've got a little tripod stool. I'll punch into some weeds or into a cornfield edge, and I'll just kind of sit there. If I see deer, I'll take off kind of in their direction or try to cut them off. Um, I found that that is a lot more enjoyable for me, and I've gotten a lot more experiences out of it, um, a lot more shot opportunities out of it, and just learned a ton more in a year of hunting on the ground, just walking versus 5 years of hunting out of a stand with a gun. Uh, one year of the bow walking around, it's a completely different world.
Yeah, it is. It's completely different when you're done on their level,
Hmm.
trying to see them and then sneak up on them, and
Yep,
yeah, there's that can be a challenge.
absolutely. I love that part of it though.
I've done that a couple times in a cornfield where you kind of you walk in, you put your head in, look both ways, don't see anything, step through, poke your head in, turn your head both ways, then when you
Yep.
see one, it's like, okay, hopefully he's not looking at you, and then you got to try and figure out how to get within bow range because walking through a cornfield while it's still up is noisy.
Noisy. Yeah. That was actually the biggest one that kind of threw me into that wanting to spot and stalk was I I think it was actually one of the last times I climbed a tree. I didn't climb a tree at all last year. The year before, I showed up, and as I'm walking to the tree, uh, the combine is in the field next to me. Empty hopper, ready to fire it up in the morning. It's like, oh, this is going to be a great morning. They cut the first row, and I watched 14 bucks all jump out of this little thicket that was in the middle of the cornfield. Jumped out of it and ran off to the side. I mean, everything from a 4 point all the way to big 14 that was twice as wide as his ears, probably 160, 180-inch deer. And they all were like 150 yards from me and went away from me. And I was like, I'd love to be over there. Well, get your butt down and get over there then. And
Right.
that's pretty much what I did. I left the stand right there. I was like, I don't care about that right now. I'll come back for it. And I ended up at full draw on a 4 point at about 15 yards. I crawled on my hands and knees into a game trail, and as soon as I popped my head up, he popped his head up, and instinct said draw. Well, I probably would have shot him that day, but half hour before that, I saw his dad, his grandpa, and his great grandpa, and all of them. And I said, no, where's your dad at? And as soon as I let it down, Big 10 was about 20 yards to his left and jumped up and took off. But it was that moment was the moment where I was like, I don't even want to get back in the tree anymore. That was so cool. That was just so exhilarating. My heart was pounding out of my chest. And I mean, I didn't harvest him, but that's an experience that I'll never forget. Being that
Right.
close. I mean, I almost could have jumped on his back.
You definitely wouldn't want to do that though.
No. But it was neat to get that close that, I could see the steam coming out of his nose, almost smell his breath. It was just wild.
Yeah, that kind of experience is cool. You remember that for a long time.
Hmm. Oh yeah. And I feel blessed that where a lot of the public that I hunt, it's very thick. So I do have probably a little bit more coverage than like out west and stuff like that. And even where I've went in some of the southern states, it's a lot thinner woods. I've got thorns and thickets and everything between me and deer. So if I can just stay low and stay in that stuff, I can get right up on them, and it's kind of wild when I talk about that with people, and they're like, "You got 15 yards from a deer?" Yeah. What? On the ground? Yep. Yeah.
Hey, you've had some experience, and like you said, in a year of on the ground, you
Hmm.
learn a lot how to do that, and sounds like you've got some really good land to practice that on. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely blessed to have some good public land around here.
yeah, there's a lot of places with public land, but not all of them is sound as like it's as good as what you have right there. That's
Yeah.
some really good land.
Yeah, we have a lot of other properties scattered through the states that they're a lot smaller and overpressured and just a little too crazy in there. Uh, the three properties that I hunt are pretty large, couple thousand acres apiece. I think the smallest one's like 5,000 acres, so it's pretty large.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you're lucky to around here to get 50 acres or 100 acres
Yeah,
in one spot that's wooded.
yeah,
I've got a couple places that's like 80 acres, but it's probably 75 or 78 acres of crop.
yeah. They do that quite a bit on that property. there is a lot of CRP fields in there. Um, but I kind of look at that as a bonus. It's a good place for them to hide out when the leaves start falling. They'll wait and they won't cut corn until like right before gun season opens up, and then they'll knock it down. Uh, it gives them a good place to hide when the leaves start falling off. They can still kind of get out there and hide in the middle of the cornfield, and they leave 10% as just crops for the animals, for the wildlife. Just trying to kind of subsidize the food plots for them. But it is definitely a mix of woods and fields cut into wherever they can fit them.
That's nice that they leave a little bit in there for the animals to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
Gives you a place to set up to ambush them.
Yes, exactly. There's one that I love. They've got a little cornfield that it's almost out on a little peninsula. Uh, and there's only one access point. There's one trail, one tractor trail that leads in there, and that's it. If they don't go in and out that way, they're swimming. Obviously, deer will swim, but I
Right.
don't think they love it.
Yeah, they're going to go where it's easiest. And if they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
walk in and
exactly.
walk out, they're going to do that rather than trying to swim.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it gets, winter time when it's, the water's froze or almost froze. Yeah, then they go walking out on the frozen ice and it's not enough to support them and fall through.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah,
don't love that.
no,
Now find the low spots where they like to cross the river too, like to hang out in those areas. Those are fun.
that kind of set up for learn the area. That's the thing that you're
Yeah,
able to do on the ground. You learn the area really well, and it takes you a
yeah,
while when you're sitting in a tree stand to figure out, okay, what's going on.
yeah.
Then you got to move your tree stand to a different spot and move your train to a different spot.
Yep.
Until you find them, where they're at, or put trail cameras up.
Yeah. And for those guys that do run a bunch of trail cameras or just grew up like that, it may not be as beneficial, it may not be necessary, but yeah, that was my biggest thing is kind of coming in blind. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sitting in a tree twiddling my thumbs, waiting on a deer to walk by. I wasn't learning anything when I was in a tree. So I didn't understand how they were patterning, what their movement patterns were like, where they were wanting to be at during times of the day. And that was the biggest stuff that being on the ground taught me. And yeah, just finding, the heavy travel routes, feeding areas, all that kind of stuff. You don't find that if you're stuck up in a tree.
Right. They get down and look at the terrain, and you can see the
Hmm.
trails, and you can sometimes you can see the footprints in
Yeah.
well, what was mud at one time when they walk through, and
Yeah.
that's always nice when it's like, okay, here's a footprint. We know they're going through. When was the last
Yep.
time it was wet?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, do you mostly do deer? Or do you hunt anything else?
I go squirrel hunting every now and again, but that's pretty much all we have around here. Turkey. I'll turkey hunt occasionally, but once I picked up the bow, I kind of put the guns down and uh, turkey season kind of falls in the middle of the beginning of tournament season for me, so I usually only get out once or twice if I do. So mostly whitetail, squirrels, rabbits. Other than that, it's a lot of fishing.
Yeah,
I need to get into that bow fishing. I That's something I've really been wanting to get into. I think it'd be kind of fun. We got a bunch of carp around here. It'd be a blast. Just go hang out on the river one day and bring home a bunch of carp.
yeah, that would be good. Bow fishing's kind of fun, and I've
Hmm.
done that quite a few times. And um, I found if you take your carp and then you flay it off, and you can flay out the bones. And then I smoked it with like an apple wood or something. And I mean,
Okay.
I thought it tasted like ham.
Okay. I can
It
dig.
was smoked carp is actually pretty good, and you just and you can flay it off like you do just about anything else. It's got the bones. It's got the
Yeah.
Y bone structure, like was it walleyes have the same bone structure?
Yeah. Yeah.
And walleye, everybody likes walleye, but they don't like carp because of the bones. Well, you just flay it off so you don't have bones.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I I'm not a picky eater that way. I know a lot of folks that won't eat carp or won't eat catfish or anything like that. I'm not going to eat the big 60-pound catfish, but any of those 10, 20s, oh, those are good. Little catfish nugget fry. Hmm.
Yeah. Cat when I'm fishing, I'm normally catfishing.
Yeah, that's my favorite. They put up a heck of a good fight.
They do. Actually, what puts up more of a fight is like a little bluegill.
Yes. Yes.
They put up one heck of a fight, especially using light tackle. I remember one time I was out catfishing and I had the liver, used liver on there and hook him on the hook. I had it out there. And, when a catfish bites, you got to set the hook.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I think it was a bluegill bit it. I set the hook, the little bluegill come flying past my face. I
I've
went
had
and
that
set the hook
happen.
and yanked it completely out of the water.
I got the opposite story for you. I was fishing a little farm pond for one of my former bosses, and she told us we could take a bucket full of bluegill home for a fish fry. Like, sweet. So I'm basically, they were like flies out there. It was ridiculous. So I just had all I had was my bass rod with me, but I tied on just a little jig head and a little plastic tail on there, and I was standing at the end of the dock and I wasn't even casting my bait caster. I was just dropping it in like it was a fly rod or something, like a pole, cane pole. And I just drop it in and a bluegill would bite it and I'd pull it up, unhook it, and throw it in the bucket. I'm sitting there doing this for probably a half hour and, throw the small ones back, throw the big ones in the bucket. And I'm not but half paying attention because it's bluegill on a bass rod. It wasn't even a fight.
Right.
I go drop it into the water and I go look at my buddy and I'm talking to him. And then I look back at the water and I watch the bluegill come up to take it. And this big, probably 10-inch, 12-inch blue cat comes up, swallows the bluegill, and snags the jig head and took off for the bottom. And he bent that bass rod. I had I think it was a 25-pound bass rod, bent over into the water. And I'm like, oh, God, buddy, get the net. I'm going to need help. We ended up having to walk it off to the beach side and go get it. And I was like, I'll never catch another catfish on a bluegill bait in my life. Tiniest little head, tiniest little hook on it, and it just barely had a hold of the corner of his lip. But he could have got free anytime. One bad kick and he would have ripped that lip off.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when I had my store, um, we sold a lot of bait and tackle as well as archery and a whole bunch of other stuff in there too. And I had
Mhm.
this one guy come in and he was going catfishing and he'd get the little crappie jigs, the black and yellow ones. That's what he was catfishing with.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, it's not what I would have used. I use like, 2-aught hook and liver, and,
Yep.
hook it and twist, hook and twist, and,
Yeah.
cast it out there. You just don't cast with your wrist because
Yeah.
then it flips the liver off.
Yep.
Just kind of swing it like a tennis racket, and
Yep.
and that's what I consider catfish bait is chicken liver.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always done like that or like the dough baits and mix up a bunch of corn and yeast and dough, stuff like that. That has been always some of my favorite. Throw some blood in there, some chicken, ground chicken in there.
Yeah, we use a lot of like the shad sides. You used to
Oh
sell them
yeah.
in jars, and then you'd have the little plastic glove, the food service gloves on there. You'd have, dozen of those with you, and because that
Yep.
stuff, you put your fingers
Yeah.
on it, it smelled for quite a while.
Oh yeah.
But the
I
catfish
forgot.
liked it.
I forgot a bag of that stuff in my trunk one year. That's an awful smell when it's baked into the trunk in 100-degree summers. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
No, that's nice about deer hunting. You don't normally have quite so smelly a stuff.
Yeah, deer pee doesn't smell great, but it doesn't smell as bad as catfish bait.
No, that is true. Catfish bait that does cause some um, thinking on your part on what you want to do with it and how you want to handle it. Yeah, looks like he froze. Video froze up a little bit, so maybe come back here soon. But yeah, it's um, those that haven't tried bow fishing, get it set up, get you a real nice reel and arrows and do some practice with it. And you don't need fletching on a bow fishing arrow because you're pulling a string out, so it's going to straighten out anyway. And then you get the nice tips and try it. I know one time I was out at the river. I'm shooting at these big fish. I don't know what they were, but I'm shooting at them and I'm missing. Finally, this little gar comes by about an inch diameter, and I hit it. It was like, okay, yeah, how come I'm missing these big ones? I hit this little bitty alligator gar fish, and that was interesting. And then trying to clean it, you know, doing a gar takes a hatchet, a hunting knife, and a fillet knife.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. That's one I've yet to catch is a gar. Oh man, I have tried and tried and tried, and I've watched them just sniff my bait and run off.
Well,
Gar,
I got
not
mine with my bow
speed.
and arrow. So
Oh, okay. Well, that's even more fun, honestly.
while you was resetting there, I was talking about where I out at the river bow fishing and missing the big carp and hit the little gar.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I lost connection for a second.
Yeah, it does that once in a while. You never know.
Oh
And
yeah, I'm out here kind of in the country, so we get okay service, but it's not great.
yeah, yeah, I know that in order to clean it, you take the hatchet, you cut it down in pieces that you can use,
Hmm.
with your fillet knife, and then you take your hunting knife and on the belly and you slice it up, and then you fillet it out, and then fillet the two pieces off, and you're done. And
Yeah.
it's a real white, almost translucent color with black stripes through it, like a rock bass. Kind of reminded me of a rock
Oh, okay.
bass
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
inside of it. And we cooked it up. It's like couldn't tell that it was a gar as opposed to anything else that she was doing.
Yeah. Any other whitefish or
Yeah,
similar? Yeah. That's kind of how I felt with catfish, because I didn't notice any of the complaints that everybody else had. As long as you get that mud vein out of there, it's good stuff.
right. And for
Yeah.
those that know the mud vein across the back, there's a yellow strip of meat. Cut that off and throw that away. Use that and compost in your garden. Great garden
Oh,
compost.
grapefruit garden.
Yeah, great for
Hmm.
your garden. And take that out. That's where you're gonna get a lot of the fishy, gamey taste in there.
Yep.
Um, just even with your deer, the how you clean it
Oh,
is a big
absolutely.
big part of it. How
Hmm.
quick did you get it processed in the field,
Yep.
and how quick did you get it cooled?
Yeah. How quick did you get it cooled? That is the big one. Not
Right,
necessarily broken down and packaged up, but how quick did you get the body temperature to drop?
right.
Yeah.
And um, I've mentioned this on a podcast a while back, but um, my buddy and I would go out, and one time the hide was just dirty and stuff. We didn't want to haul it in a garage to hang it up and clean it,
Yeah.
and you know, as Nugent says, get the jammies off and get it all cut up. So we're hosing it all down to clean it on the inside and the outside, and we went to take the hide off. That hide comes just so easy; it just pulls
Really?
right off,
Oh,
and
gotta love that.
never even thought about that. That it actually loosened between the hide and the membrane on the meat. It just
Yeah,
kind of just
soften that
peeled
membrane.
right. It softened. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was amazed at how easy it come off after. So from then on, we soaked all the hides before we did anything with them.
Honestly, that's a good idea too, especially if you're going to tan them. I mean, you got to kind of rinse them off and clean them up anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, not a bad idea. I might have to try that sometime. Yeah, I'm big on it, especially during the early hunts, early October, any or down south where it's warm. I'm grabbing a bag of ice at the closest gas station I can get to stuff in there into that cavity.
yeah,
It That makes a huge difference. I know so many guys that just, gut it in the field and they'll throw it in the back of the truck and take it to the processor and whatever they do to work. Nah, nah. Get that thing on ice as quick as possible. Get that skin off of it.
yeah. get it taken care of. That's the biggest key. And
Hmm.
I've always processed my own,
I have
just
to.
for one, I know it's my deer. Two, I know how it's been treated, and three,
Yeah.
I can cut it the way I want it cut.
Yep. Yep.
And there's a difference on your ground because at the time when I first started, I had an old hand crank one, and
Yeah.
any membrane would not go through it. So I'm constantly pulling it. So I've got 100% pure meat, no
Yeah.
fat, no tendons, no
No
membrane of any
junk in
kind.
there.
And then
Yeah.
I got a little bit bigger one, and then it still plugs up. But then now I got an electric one. Actually, my son has it now, but it'll whatever you put it, it'll grind it up. So you got to make sure you clean it ahead of time.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
could always tell the difference between the ground that I did versus what the meat processor does because
Yep.
they aren't as careful to getting the fat off.
Yep.
And those that don't
Or that
know, uh, venison fat smells bad and tastes bad
tastes
when you cook
bad.
it.
It's awful. It's awful, and that's where most people get that gamey taste from. In my experiences, anytime I've noticed a gamey flavor is because they didn't clean it properly. They didn't get that tallow off of there.
Yeah, definitely want to take that off. It's not
Hmm.
like beef or pork fat, which
Yep.
can add some flavor. No, this don't add no flavor at all.
No. It makes it worse. It's almost waxy.
Yeah,
Leaves
and
like
then
a
too,
waxy texture on your tongue.
yeah, it's yeah, it's not good.
Mm-mm.
But the meat, oh man, that's really good though. You take a hamburger that's done up with all the just the pure meat, and it's really good.
Oh yeah.
I know we had one. Actually, I got a buck this last season with my car, and not the way I wanted to get one, but the
No.
meat is a real nice dark red, and we wanted to mix it with some regular beef just to make it go further. And
Yeah.
when you have no fat in it, they don't hold together very well. You gotta
No.
add egg or something to it anyway. So we just went where they had one of the little logs, like with the 10-pound logs, and opened
Hmm.
up, and it's like, okay, this is supposed to be beef. It looks almost white because there's so much fat in it, and it's supposed to be
Yeah.
like 80% lean or something like that. And
Whatever.
so I mixed it in. It wasn't near the nice dark red that we had, but I had zero fat and 80% fat. So it gave me like 10% fat
Yeah.
because I mix about one for one.
Yeah,
And
and it makes a great burger that way. It sticks a lot better, and you get a good balance of flavors.
yeah, and it makes it go a little bit further. But,
A little bit.
the steaks,
My
I don't
favorite.
do anything with that, but, I just cook it
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah, same. A little seasoning, but yeah, just straight up. My favorite for burgers is honestly breakfast sausage. Do a 2 pounds venison, 1 pound breakfast sausage ratio. They stick real good. They got a good consistency to them, and the flavor. That's a Gordon Ramsay trick right there, actually. He
Oh,
does
yeah.
that with his just ground beef burgers. He'll mix in a little bit of breakfast sausage, and it's wild how much it doesn't taste like breakfast sausage, but it adds a whole new layer of flavor to a good burger.
Yeah, that would. I've made some breakfast sausage, with the venison and taken some beef with it and used the mixes and,
Hmm.
made a good breakfast sausage. And I can see how, you mixed in like that and if you got the potter will make like 25 pounds and you got 25 pounds instead of making the whole thing, maybe like a third of it or something
Yeah.
and give a
Yeah.
little flavor. I can see how that would work really good as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely, there's a line. I don't like to do a half and half ratio. I like to be a little heavier on the venison with those, but oh, that's probably my favorite burger. I don't think even a good restaurant burger can quite come close to that.
No, probably not. So there for a while, I had so much venison all the time that whenever I'd have any beef, I was like, "Ooh, what is this weird this taste?" Like, "Oh, okay,
Oh,
it's just beef." Okay, I was
it's
so
just,
so used to the good quality of the meat from the venison, then you have the
yep.
beef, and it's like, "Oh, what is this? Oh, yeah, okay, it's just beef."
Yeah. Especially after eating venison. I try to, obviously, with the way the market is right now, it's kind of impossible, but I try to go to locally sourced uh, beef and get it from a local farmer or even just a local meat market because the quality is just 10 times better than
Yeah,
than like we talked to those rolls that it's you cut it open and it's almost white because there's so much fat in there. We got spoiled and bought half a cow or something like that. And we just finished it off a while ago. And I brought it in and made some tacos out of that and some venison. And I was like, looked at my kids. I was like, this is the last of the good beef and the last of the ground venison. And they were like, oh no. And I'm like, it's okay. We'll get more. It's good when you got kids that are dying over it that are wanting it.
well, and I raised my kids to eat it, and
Hmm.
they notice. I'd get a deer, I'd bring it home, and um, and then when we're fixing it, say, "Deer brought home this. That's what we're eating. It's good, isn't it?" Yep.
Yep.
The, the the weird ones is when somebody's eating this. Oh man, this is really good. You say it's venison. Oh yuck! I'm like,
Yeah.
you just said it was
I
good.
love some people. I love people like that. My father-in-law a couple years ago made up some burgers and just cooked them on the grill, brought everything in, and oh boy, he was about halfway through it. This is probably one of the best burgers I've ever had. Thanks. That was the deer I brought home a couple months ago. What? It tastes gamey. It does, huh? Oh, okay. Sure it does. Not what you said 2 minutes ago, but okay. All right, bud. Those
Yeah,
people
you
crack
just
me up.
yeah they um yeah, it's what you get in your mind. It's like when you eat something you don't normally eat. A lot of it's just mental. You're just block the fact that what you're trying to eat, and just
Yep.
try it. You might like it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's probably one of my favorite things my grandparents did when I was a kid is they just threw stuff on my plate and didn't tell me what it was. So I was probably 10 or 12 and I tried rattlesnake, alligator, calamari, octopus rings. Just we went down to Florida on a vacation and they just bought a little bit of everything, wanted to try all the seafood and stuff. They threw a little bit of everything on my plate and they're like, it's just an onion ring. Oh, it's just a piece of steak. Try it. And I found out real quickly that had they told me what it was, I probably wouldn't have eaten it, but it was all delicious. It was all good stuff. So I try to fib a little bit with my kids too, just to get them to try it. If they don't like it, they don't like it. But when you tell a kid this is squid, they go ew.
Yeah. Well, put it on a plate and you're eating it. It's like, it's good, isn't it? And then the next thing
Yep.
you know, it's like, well, what was it? And then you tell them. And I know when I was doing martial arts, and we'd go to this one restaurant, and um, Master Shin, he'd just order stuff. And I remember this
Hmm.
one dish coming. It was a seafood platter of some kind, and I'm eating this, and then I asked his daughter, I said, "What is this?" "Well, just eat it." Like, no, what is it? And then I think she said it was sea cucumber or something like that. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's okay. It's just a little chewy, and
Yeah, yeah,
it all tastes good. It was good. I don't mind. It's like I just want to know what it was, so I could, you
yeah,
know. They say, well, it's got all this, and this, and it's like, oh, okay,
yeah. That's how I am. I've gotten such an open mind now. I think because of those experiences when I was younger, that I think without those, seafood definitely wouldn't be my favorite like it is now.
yeah.
Goodness, we're closed and this thing still keeps ringing.
Well, yeah. Yeah, just because you close doesn't mean the phone number don't work.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, they'll leave it. Figure you might be there late. Well, tonight you are.
Yeah. It's
If you're not
it's
going to
never
open the door
ending.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get people all the time show up. I come in a lot during the summer and shoot or tinker on my own stuff or whatever. And we got people that show up and knock on the door. And I'm like, I just wave at them. There's a sign right there. If you just look 6 inches down, it says closed.
Yeah.
Come back tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. We're closed, and I know some guys when I had my shop, they knew what time we closed, and they'd try and call in ahead of time, and sometimes I would stay and sometimes I wouldn't, depending on what it was. And
Yeah.
there's a couple
And what you
times
got going on?
yeah, there's a couple times I tell them, well, I'll show up. I ain't got time while we're open, but show up and we'll fix it afterwards. Or I had one
Yeah.
guy, it's like, um, he called wanted to shoot 2 arrows at one time, and all the other shops said no.
No.
Feel like that? No. I was like, okay. You're gonna have to come just before we close because you can't afford me while I'm open. And it's like, let's play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we played. I was like, it was cool. It's interesting. Something I hadn't
It
done
is.
before, and
Yeah.
learn a lot when you're trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
not only you basically double the weight of your arrow because now you're shooting 2 arrows.
Yeah. Bet that bow is quiet.
Yeah. And that's when we're shooting aluminum arrows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet that thing didn't make hardly any noise for what it was.
No, the arrows didn't go very fast, but
No.
you learn a lot from that. And I've gone over that
Yeah.
in some of the other podcasts, what we learned from that, and how to set up loops and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting what you end up doing and to make it work. And
Yeah.
but we get it done.
Yeah. That is interesting. I hadn't heard anybody trying. Well, I've seen trad bows people do that before, but I've never seen that done on a compound. I'll have to check that out. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's basically it was not a center shot design riser. It used the stick on rests. Same thing
Oh,
you do
okay.
a trad bow, except it was a compound.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we had to put a knock below the bottom air, above the top air, a knock above a knock point above the bottom arrow, so it wouldn't move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we'd up tying a loop above the top one and below the bottom one. And that give us our best arrow flight. He was using a
Interesting.
release to shoot it, and it was cool what we figured out on that, and
Yeah.
why you don't want to have, if you tie soft knots, you have to tie two, one above, one below.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Otherwise, you
makes
don't get a good arrow flight.
yeah. That makes
It's all
sense.
physics.
Yeah. It is all physics.
Yeah, I talked about it in a couple of other podcasts, so just go back and listen to those, and I
Yeah.
went
I'll have to.
pretty good description on that, and that was kind of cool on what we learned from that, and there's all kinds of little things that you learn how to do, and
Mhm.
especially when you grow up on. I started in the '60s with a recurve, 25-pound Ben Pearson recurve. I still
Oh,
have the
wow.
bow. I
That's
still
awesome.
have arrows that I made when I was in scouts. I still
Heck yeah.
have a few of those. I don't think I have any. No, I don't have any handy. They're all they're all on another quiver someplace downstairs. But um, yeah, that was quite interesting. I put a bracket on it so I could put a fishing reel on it. I can't even get my hand in it anymore.
Mm.
But that was, you know, I was 10, 12.
Yeah.
My hands were pretty small compared to what they are now, and but that was, you had aluminum arrows, wood arrows, fiberglass arrows. That was your
Yeah.
option.
Yep.
And I'm not even sure if they had plastic vanes. It's all feathers. Um,
Probably.
Now your fishing arrows had those little rubber vanes on them that you normally took off because
Yeah.
they didn't do any good anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Or they
they
blow off the first time you shot
yeah,
it.
yeah, they'd catch on your wrist or something, and they just rip them
Mhm.
right off, and you just leave them
Oh, yeah.
off and don't do. You got the string on the back of it to force it to go straight.
Yeah. Exactly. That string does act a lot like a vein.
Yeah. Well, it drags it from the back as long as you tie it correctly. You tie the right knot on there,
Yeah.
and that works out pretty nice. And they had the went through the first you'd tie a knot through the hole in the back of the arrow, but then when you'd shoot, that string could catch onto your rest and everything else. So then they come up with a cable that you'd fasten on the hole in the back and one in the front, and then you put like a little swivel, a couple beads and swivels on there. And then the problem with that is it'd pull on the top of the arrow, and then they come up with the nice slides that slide down there, and then you get a lot better flight from them. There's like three
Yeah.
different variations, and it's safe because it slides up to the tip, and then when you shoot, it just stays there and hits the back of it and pulls it out, and get a good
Yeah.
arrow flight. Then that's what I use on mine now. So much nicer.
Well, I may have to pick your brain a little more whenever I start building a bow fishing setup.
Yeah, yeah. Just let me know. We'll get on here and we'll get something set up for you. And
Yeah. Yeah. That's one I've not tinkered with a whole lot. We don't have them here in the shop. There's not a whole lot of that around here. There's a couple shops that sell them, but not very many. They've got like, each of those shops have maybe two of the pre-built bow fishing packages, and that's about it. Some
yeah.
arrows. Yeah. Not very
So do you
big around here. I know that's a southern thing, I think, down there by Louisiana and by the bayou and bigger rivers, I think.
you don't have a lot of carp in your rivers and lakes and stuff then up there?
Some, they're definitely getting more and more popular. As they go on, they're kind of taking over. We've got those Asian carp, but
Oh yeah.
our rivers, yeah, our rivers aren't too terrible. It's usually the reservoirs kind of get them clogged up because we've got a few different flood control reservoirs up north that kind of seem to keep them kind of clogged up there. But they're definitely down in the rivers, just not prevalent as what I've seen. Like the Ohio is like flooded with them.
Yeah, I know there's big old bow fishing tournaments around here. They get
Yeah,
on some of the lakes and stuff, and early season, now they're going to be a little bit deeper. They're a little bit harder to hit.
yeah,
And it's interesting where you have to actually shoot, because where you see the fish is not where they're at.
yeah. They're lower.
Yeah, you got to shoot where they're at, not where it looks like they're at.
Yeah. Yep, they're actually way lower than what they are. I've watched a bunch of the videos on it and stuff, and it's very interesting. I wish it was more prevalent around here. I'd definitely already have a setup.
Well, and one good way to see what the effects is take a clear glass, fill it with water, and put something in it that's straight, like a round tube or something,
Yeah,
and look where the water is, and then all of a sudden that arrow or something you put in there now shifts over and continues down. So that just
yep,
shows you how far it's off, and that's just a little short distance. You
yeah.
know,
Just a little piece of glass, a little glass of water. We're not talking a foot, 3 feet of water. Yeah,
yeah. Well, around here, if they're 3 feet below the surface, you're not seeing them anyway.
no, exactly.
The water's not clear enough around here. They're going to have
Yeah,
to be on the surface to see them. And then you don't have to worry about how far they're off because, you can see the top of their backs. And
yeah, yep. Right now, our waters look about like that, but usually they get a little clear, and we can usually see most of the bottom until you get to those deep holes in the river. But we got a lot of spots where I'll wade out and I can see the bottom up to about my knees, about 2 feet deep. I can see all the way down. Usually, after all this rain we got this past week, not so much.
yeah.
Or everything's like 5 feet over normal level or 10 feet over normal level right now. Still,
Yeah. And most of our little,
we
little
had
rivers and creeks around here are pretty muddy and, all the time. So you're just not going to see the bottom. Some of your lakes, I've been at a couple lakes where you can actually see down to the bottom and in most of it, but it's one of those. It's a sand bottom, and the level of the
oh yeah,
lake is the level of the river. It's close to the
yeah,
river, so So it goes up and down with the level of the river. It's going through sand, so it's got it filtered, and
Yeah, it's filtering
not
through.
many of
Yeah.
those though.
No, there's not.
So you do tournament shooting as well, then you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly ASA stuff. Don't love shooting indoor stuff. I do it just because it's cold and outside and, you got to shoot, got to get the reps in. Uh, Mostly ASA. I dabbled in IBO a little bit and I figured out that my internal rangefinder is not quite calibrated yet. uh, and I'm being told I need to shoot more USA stuff, more of the world archery stuff, just to see how I stack up. Because why not? But I've never this coming weekend actually will be my first USA tournament, and I won't even be legal for it because I'll be shooting my camo bow.
Oh,
And it's just a local one, so they don't care. I'm friends with all of the organizers and stuff, and I just told them I'm just going to shoot it as a guest just to see how I do and come shoot my bow and hang out with everybody.
no,
I know the
no,
rules. I can't have a light. I can't have a camo bow, and I broke both of those. So I just want to shoot my bow, guys. And they don't care.
no. Why can't you have a camo bow?
It's a world archery rule.
Oh yeah, huh. I
Yeah,
guess I never really paid attention to that one.
yeah. I didn't know that until this year, and I thought that was kind of wild. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense because what is archery without hunting, and what is hunting without camo? I don't understand it. To me, it's like cutting the roots off a tree. Camo is where, or hunting is where archery started, and camo is a part of that. If you cut the roots out of a tree, it dies. Trying to cut the roots out of archery by taking camo out of it. So, but yeah, there's actually videos on YouTube and stuff of guys showing up to world archery events in other countries, and they had to spray paint their blow. I'm
That's
not spray
that.
painting it. That's not happening.
No, no.
And then I know there's states like this, and I still find that kind of crazy. You're not allowed to have any electronics on your bow whatsoever. So no sight lights. And that's a whole nother monster for me that I've never really played with. We don't have any rules against that hunting wise here. So I've always had a light. And then I went
Yeah,
out and started practicing with some of those USA folks. And they were like, yeah, you can't have that. Why? Again, I don't understand that one. I don't even have a reason for it.
yeah. And I have a light on mine, but I have fiber optic pins, and
Yeah.
except for early season, we have a canopy when there's no sun comes through. I never turn my light on anyway, because by the
On my
time the
hunting bow, I
pins,
don't.
yeah, by the time the pins start glowing, it's time to shoot. By the time they quit glowing, it's time to quit. If I can't see
Yeah.
my pins,
Yeah, my
it's not
hunting.
hunting time.
Exactly. That's how I've always played it too. And my hunting bow's set up that way that I've got a light on it, but I think I turned it on once last season. Kind of same situation. I turned it on for like a last light situation as a just in case, but by that point it's too late to shoot anyway if I need that light. But on my tournament setup, I don't have a lot of fiber wrapped around it. It's just a short little piece that runs right out of the scope and right to the light because that's all I needed because I wasn't
Yeah,
setting it up for that. So it doesn't gather a whole lot of natural light. I found that if I had all that extra fiber on there, it caused it to starburst more and just take up too much of my target.
yeah. And I found one time that I had the light on, and the fiber optic pin was so bright I couldn't see past it to see the deer anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I set this bow up that way. Was I don't want I want to have full control over it with the light itself, not be out in a field shooting, field archery and have all this sun just glow in that pen to and making it huge because that was my experience. I have astigmatism, so if it gets too bright, it just turns into a big star. and then I can't see my target. I can't see my deer. I can't see past that pen. So that'll be a new challenge whenever I start playing with that, going to the field events.
Yeah, I may have to get yourself a different bow.
Yep. Yep.
Oh darn, you got to buy another bow.
God dang it. That's always such a hard problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Well, I've got the bow. Now I'm working on the accessories. I actually took my old 3D bow and I'm gonna build it out with some new stuff and set it up for World Archery because it's lime green, so they can't complain about it. It's still blending in the woods though.
Yeah.
That early season.
Well, the deer don't see color anyway. They see ultraviolet range. So as long as you don't have a UV bright bow, they're not going to see it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've been told blue that they see, but I don't know that I could attest to that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I also know is they don't really have the color receptors in their eyes, so they're
Yeah.
going to see mostly shades of gray, and
Yep.
some colors may shine a bit more, but they see in the ultraviolet light range.
Mhm.
And I always a lot of them have the arrows, they got to have the camo arrows and stuff. And I always figure at the point the deer can tell you don't have camoed arrows, you're already busted anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had one stop this past year at like 15 yards and look at me and just kind of do one of those. Are you a person?
Yeah, just look at you
It's
and
still
turn their
enough.
head and stop.
Yep. Yep. Trying to get you to jump. She got lucky. She was hidden behind a bush. I couldn't get a shot off on her.
Well, yeah, sometimes they do get lucky that way, don't they?
Yeah. Yep. I was actually just trying to bump her to my buddy. I was trying to make a bunch of noise and kick her out away from me. She apparently thought I was another deer. She was trying to come find me.
Yeah. Sometimes you make noise, they think it's another deer. Um,
Yeah.
I was listening to a guy telling stories. He was older and he didn't see very well, didn't move very quick, and so he would do more watching and listening. So he'd scurry along, like the squirrels do, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then stop and just look around, and he'd move up a little bit and stop, move up a little bit and stop, and anything to break that cadence of step, 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 step.
Yes.
Go in there and don't try and be quiet because they end up making more noise. Go in,
Yes.
drag your feet, and then stop and look around, and
That
that
was
always kind of made sense.
Yeah, that was the hardest pill for me to swallow when I first started spot and stalking was the few lessons I do remember from my grandpa taking me when I was a kid was sit down and shut up, be quiet. Which is valid in a lot of situations, but when you're walking on the ground, no. You want to be breaking some twigs and rustling some leaves and like you said, breaking at that cadence of the step, 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 and just kicking some leaves around and dragging your feet a little bit. Don't sound like a human walking through the woods. And that was such a hard pill for me to swallow. And teaching any of my friends that are deer stand hunters to do that is almost impossible. I've got one buddy that's all he does is he knows his spots, he knows the deer, he knows where they travel. He's been doing this since he was like 6. So in the same properties, yeah. So for him, it's get into the stand location as quietly as possible and get up in a tree as quietly as possible. And then I take him out with me stalking around and, nearby areas. And he's like, dude, you're making too much noise. And I'm like, I don't sound like a human, so it doesn't matter. It's like the look of confusion on his face.
Yeah. I remember one time I was walking in, I had a little bitty small mini mag light, and I'm going just so I could see, and all of a sudden this deer gets up, runs not very far. So I cover up the light, turn the light off, and I just stand there, and I'll wait for a little bit, and then I hear him moving in, so I just kind of end up walking my tree stand, get up my tree stand, get all strapped in, before sunrise. That deer come walking past my tree stand.
Oh
Didn't shoot
yeah.
it. It was still dark.
Oh yeah. Yep. I've had a couple of those situations too, in stands especially. Get out there in the dark. You got to get out there a half hour or more before the sun comes up. So you get up there in the tree, and then all of a sudden, deer walk right by you, right underneath of you. You just
Yeah.
gotta watch them. It's a great experience, great knowledge to gather, but man, it hurts the ego a little bit, hurts my feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. When they come walking by that they're too early.
Yeah, or too late. That's always the
Yeah.
worst too. When you've sat for 2, 3, 6 hours, and all of a sudden the sun goes down, and big old buck walks right by you, or he's out in the trail that you're taking on your way out. Ugh, make you sick.
I've had
It's
that
a lot of
before.
those situations too
Yeah.
that
I've
made me
actually
go to
had that
stop.
one time. Yeah, where
Yeah,
where I'm sitting in a tree stand and it's got dark, ready to get down here. This deer comes walking in and hanging around my tree stand. I can't shoot it. I can hear it walking around, and it's like, and I'm
yeah,
stuck. I can't sit down because I'm already standing. And finally, I got moved a little bit, made a little bit of noise, and then it finally trotted off so I can get down. But man, what do you do? You don't want to spook it because you want to come by during the daylight.
yeah, yep. There's a lot of those lessons that were really interesting for me coming from being in a tree, all of my previous hunting history.
Yeah, definitely different hunting out of a tree stand than it is on the ground or even in a blind. Hunting in a blind can be a little bit different because you've got cover around you. Up here in the northern states, it's kind of nice being a blind because it's a little warmer. You don't have that wind. But for me, it's restricted a little bit of my viewing. I like the tree stands, even if it is a little colder, just so I can see what's going on around me. And it is sure nice. I've been in a tree in a blind on the ground, and it was nice. I could take off my big heavy parka because I didn't have that big wind or anything. And that's you just got to find what works best for you. For me, I like hunting out of an elevated platform. Basically sniper. Yeah, get up high and get elevated. Looks like Mason's back again. You're muted. Yeah, a little better video this time too.
Well, good. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. My signal just drops completely off.
Yeah, I'm
I got
surprised
great
mine hadn't
signal.
done that, but
Yeah, got great signal for all of it, and then all of a sudden it just shows me the exclamation point like I got nothing.
yeah, I was while you was gone, I was just talking about hunting out of ground blinds and the advantages, disadvantages of those and
Hmm.
elevated. I prefer a tree stand still. Um,
Yeah,
Getting up in a tree stand or a ladder stand. Ladder
yeah,
stand is a
most
little bit
do.
easier, but
Yeah, I think most do. The transition to saddles seems to be taken over, so there's a little bit more of the. I'm going to consider those folks kind of a hybrid. They want to get up in the tree, but they still want to move.
yeah. But what I've seen from the saddles is, you can move around your tree a little bit more and get a little
Yeah.
better shot. If you need to turn, you can turn, or if you're in a platform, whether it be in a ladder stand or a hang on, you only got so much movement. You can't work your way around the tree a little bit, and
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
got something coming, you can't move to kind of hide a little bit better from them. And
Yeah.
where you're at's where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the folks that are using saddles around here, though, they aren't getting as high as what a lot of people talk about. Um, One of the guys I kind of bounce ideas off of with that stuff, he killed it was a just shy of 150-inch buck last year, 7 feet off the ground. He just got high enough to be able to see over that coverage, see over the green veil of weeds and thickets and all that. He just wanted to be able to see up over the top of it and see what was coming near. But he said he stalked his way all the way in there, and he knew there was a buck in the bed that he was walking to. He saw tines poke up when he, got towards there. So he just picked a tree and got a few feet up above the twigs, and that's all she wrote. Like those kind of experiences are super cool. That's just most guys that I've talked to, they're 20 feet up, 30 feet up. They want to get way up there.
Makes for a hard angle shot if they come walking in fairly close to your tree. If you're
Yeah,
20 feet up and it's 20 feet out, that's
yeah,
that's a really sharp angle, and it's hard to get a good shot off when you're that steep of an angle. And
yeah. Well, and I think that's one of my biggest things I think I've learned from 3D shoots. Most people in those situations would probably, most of your average bow hunters are going to put their 20 pin on it and pull through a shot at that angle. How is the arrow reacting? How is it coming out of the bow? Are we still dealing with the second axis parallax? Should you have shot it for a 60-yard pin? You learn that stuff shooting 3D.
yeah, especially the close range ones. And there's a
Yeah.
whole thing. I've gone through this many times, but those really close, like the 5 feet shots.
Yes.
How do you
Yes.
shoot a shot at 5 feet?
Yeah.
You're going to use like a 70 or 80 yard pin.
Yeah. For me, it's I think it's 75 yards on this bow for 2 yards. For a
Yeah.
2 yard shot. And your average bow hunter is not going to think about that. Now, the odds of you
No.
getting a 5 foot shot on a deer is pretty slim, but it can happen, especially if you're that far up a tree and they can't see you. Then you
I've
throw
been,
the downward angle into it, and we've got a whole nother math equation to figure out.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot. I've had them walk in, where they basically walk in right into my tree stand, and those are like next to impossible shots to make because the angle you have to shoot, basically you got to almost spine them,
Yeah.
to get any kind
Yep.
of a shot that's just so close.
Yep.
If you're the higher up you are, the harder it is. Now you got to try and go through the spine, and that's a real risky shot.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. You're almost
I
better to
always
go
try
for
to,
a neck there.
yeah, I try to set for 20 yard shots, but they never listen. They always come in closer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good problem to have, though, I guess.
Sorry,
Better than them
go
coming
away.
in
You're
too
too
far.
close. You're too close. Hey, go away.
Yeah. Back up a minute. Yep. But that's probably I think the biggest thing that I've learned from 3D is that kind of stuff. When they throw you those, you got to climb up a platform and shoot a turkey that's actually right underneath the platform. What mark do you use? What yardage do you set your sight for? Most bow hunters don't practice those kinds of shots, I don't think.
No,
So
but
that's the
that's why
stuff
they
I
do
try
them.
to. Yeah, that's why they do them because it throws people off. And that's what I tell a lot of my bow hunting buddies that don't shoot any 3D. Like you got to go out there and shoot some of these just for the experience of what does your bow do at 12 degrees downhill on an 80-yard shot? What's it do? Do you need to add some
Yeah,
yardage? Do you need to cut some yardage? Okay, well, what about a 5 yard shot uphill? Again, do you need to add? Do you need to cut? Do you shoot it right on? What? You don't know unless you do it. Practice it.
that's
Also
why
makes
we
you a
do
lot.
the 3D shoots.
Yeah, yeah. Also makes you a lot more comfortable shooting at those tight windows. 'Cause, oh, those are my favorite when you got trees on either side of them and you gotta thread the needle.
Yeah,
It'll make you a lot more confident for those shots when the deer walks in right in between two trees, and stops.
yeah. That's definitely the advantage of shooting the 3Ds. Getting
Hmm.
out there gets you the practice of judging yardage. Especially if it's an unknown yardage shoot.
Yeah.
There have some known yardage ones, but I've always shot the unknown.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you were starting shooting 3D, rangefinders were $1,000, weren't they?
Uh, Probably that or more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's what I figured.
if you could even get them,
Yeah.
because they didn't have them really available for, individual to buy them. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until recently that, you had rangefinders that you could actually get a decent price on. And I actually have one, but I can't see it, a little,
Yeah.
little Vortec one. And it wasn't very expensive, but, you know, I, I've used it a couple of times, but, out of, when I set up the tree stand, it's like, okay, that's a 30-yard shot. Okay. And,
Yeah.
just range find them and not like I used to do. And
Yep.
you get used to one good advantage. I've talked about this several times, but mark out 20 yards and step it off
Yep.
and step it off and step it off and step it off. So now you know exactly how many steps is 20 yards. And if you're not sure, don't have a rangefinder, just walk
You
out
can walk.
20 yards, put a flag.
Yeah. Break a twig,
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's something I think it's beneficial though for, those folks like me that came into this late. I'm going to say late, but, uh, come into this as an adult that I've never had any reason to judge yardage before archery. My internal rangefinder when I first started this was 10 yards off. I walked into ranges and went, "What is that? 30 yards?" And they go, "That's 20." And I went, "I don't know." I had no reason before archery to ever judge yardage or even think about that. So I think the known distance classes are beneficial just for the first couple years learning, figuring out, calibrating that internal rangefinder. Because now I'm like I said 3 years or so into it, and I'm starting to transition back over into some more of the unknown distance classes and judging yardage. And I think if I would have started out unknown, I don't know that I would have stuck with it. That first year, I shot a few of the unknown IBO local stuff. Those hurt my ego.
Yeah.
You think you're doing great, and then you shoot a low five, and you go, "What the heck happened there?" And the guys you're shooting with go, "Well, what'd you shoot it for?" "I shot it for 35." "Well, it was about 42." "Oh."
Yeah.
So I think it was helpful for me to be able to kind of calibrate my internal rangefinder a little bit and learn the targets and what size the animals are and what those look like at different distances for a year or two.
Yeah. That can definitely help if you're not sure. And some of your tournaments won't let you use a rangefinder at all.
Yeah.
And others, if you're not in the running for trophies and scores and stuff like that, and your group wants to use rangefinders, but you're just shooting for fun, then you can use them on some of them, and others just won't let you use them at all,
Yeah.
because it's not fair to anybody else if you say, "Oh, well, that's 42-yard shot," and
Mhm.
they're doing it for score, and now they have an unfair advantage. and
Yep.
and I think the way you should use the rangefinder anyway, even if it's valid to use, you judge the yardage, you make your shot, and if you didn't get what you thought, now you range find it.
Yeah. That's a lot of
And
what I
I
do on our practice course.
Yeah, and then in that way you're not depending on the rangefinder. You're learning how to judge yardages.
Yep.
And I do yardages, I don't look at the trail, especially if you're on a hill on top of a platform, you're elevated up and the trail's down at the bottom.
Yep.
Look at the trail, find a tree, and go up so it's level with you. Judge yardage to that tree, not
Yep.
to the trail. Now, rangefinders, you just go down there and say, "Oh, well, that's a 20-yard shot," but
Yeah.
you look in a straight line, it's 50 yards.
Yeah.
And I had one where I did that. It's like I knew that that trail was 20 yards away from me horizontally, but that deer was so small that by looking at the size of the deer, I'd have said, "No, that's a 40 or 50-yard shot."
Yep.
I shot it for 20 and I got it because I
Hmm.
knew the trail was 20 yards away.
Yes. Yeah. Learning that stuff. And like you said, shooting it the way you talked about. Go up, judge the yardage, shoot the shot. If you didn't hit what you wanted to hit, range it. I do that on our practice course out here in our woods all the time. And I think that's huge for building confidence in your judging.
Yeah, it definitely is. So kind of to end this up, what would you recommend to somebody that's getting started out or trying to maintain their bow? What would you recommend they do?
Uh, don't stress over it too much. Shoot what you've got and get out there and have fun because nobody's judging your equipment but you. Especially there's so many that are I'm going to say intimidated by getting out and shooting 3D and shooting tournaments that people are going to judge them for shooting a 15-year-old bow and you know whatever. Nobody cares. Shoot what you got. Go have fun. That's all we're doing. We're out there having fun. If you see me with my freaking couple $1,000 bow, I'm not judging you with your bear adapt. I If you're behind the string and having fun, that's all any of us care about.
Yeah, I've got my bow I hunt with is 24 years old,
Yeah,
and the one I use, where I'm going like 3Ds and stuff like that, is 23 years old.
yeah. And there's a guy like you on every 3D course that's shooting a 10, 20-year-old bow and hammer in the middle. They're doing great. They're keeping up. There's nowhere that says you got to have the latest and greatest.
No.
They're just guys like me that are dumb and work in shops and get good deals on stuff that buy too much stuff and have poor financial decisions.
Well, I got both those bows when I owned the shop. So
Well, yeah. See, then you get it.
yeah,
It's hard
and
not to when you get those prices.
I do have a 2015, I think, bear
Hmm.
in the snow camo. I couldn't tell you what the brand is because I got a really good deal on it because our shop basically got all the returns from
Oh,
Cabela's,
yeah.
and then we fixed them up and sold them on our used rack
Oh, nice.
because we had two of us and we knew how to do all that, and we would
Yeah.
fix oriented Vicks. And I got this $900 bow for, I don't know, was it $150 something like, because it needed strings and cables and it had some other problems with it that nobody was going to fix it up themselves because I knew how to do it. So I got a good deal on it. And so I got it all fixed up, ready to mount sights and rest on it. And it's been that way for probably 8, 9 years.
It's a good backup when you need it, though.
I hadn't even put a rest on the side on it. It just sits in my safe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good backup, though, if you ever need it.
Yeah. And worst case, I take my target bow and I set up real quick to hunt with it. And
That's like,
yeah,
one of the reasons I was okay with the camo target bow was it's a hybrid anyway. 35-inch, that's a short bow from, guys that been there as long as you guys have. That's a little bow.
yeah,
It's big now, but you know, go back to the 90s and that was a tiny bow.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of 35, 36, 38, 42
Yeah.
axle bows. A little more forward momentum when they go off because all the force is
Hmm.
forward. The
Yeah,
newer ones now, there's not as much forward force. They sit in your hand a little better, but
they do.
that's
They do.
that's the way it is.
Yeah. But that's why I was definitely okay with it.
Yeah, it looks like you're having trouble with your internet again. He'll probably be back in a little bit. But yeah, it's like, or wait for him to come back. I just want to let everybody remind everybody, you can listen to the podcast on audible.com. Just go out there and search for Arch Talk 101 and sign up
There it
that
is.
way. Yeah, here you're back. I was just kind of letting them know where they can listen and watch everything. And
Yeah.
you can also listen to them wherever you get your podcast at, as well as you can watch this the video of us talking and chatting and whatever we're doing. Kind of a little more animated podcast.
Yeah.
Um, go out to my YouTube channel, learn to fix it yourself. It's a good place to go, as well as go out to Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. That's a really good group. We have all kinds of archers in there that have been shooting 60, 70 years, as well as bow techs and archery instructors. If you have a question with your form, take a video on your phone, upload it from your phone right to the group, and we'll give you some pointers.
Yeah,
There's
pick it apart.
there's always someone that has come into a problem and solved it. If you have a problem with the way your bow is set up, let us know.
Yep.
If you're near a shop, I recommend going into, a pro shop, just
A
because,
reputable one.
yeah, that way, you pretty much be sure that somebody in the shop knows how to work on your bow. If it's a new shop, only work on new bows, like you guys started out, it's a little bit more difficult to find somebody that's going to work on a 20, 25-year-old bow and know how to work on them. But generally, they have somebody there that's been in long enough and they can figure it out.
Yep.
Or, there's a lot of different options. Like I said, join the Facebook group, Archery Talk 101, and we'll help you out best we can. I started out shooting bows before there was compounds.
Yeah.
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 The first compounds were developed in the late 60s. They weren't
Yep.
even really commercially available until the mid 70s. So they haven't been around that long.
No. No, it's still a
And
very new machine in the grand scheme.
yeah, yeah. So that's been thing you always want to do is go to an archery shop that has reputable people in there. Sometimes you go to your box stores like Bass Pro Cabela's. I know when I worked at both those here in La Vista, Omaha area, Council Bluffs area, we had people in there that knew how to work on bows because we'd all worked in shops before,
Yeah.
and so you could go into something like that. If you go to any of those, you may or may not have somebody that knows what's going on. It's
Yeah.
kind of just a shot in the dark. But if you go in there and start asking questions, you'll figure out really quick whether or not they know what they're doing, or if they're just somebody
Absolutely
that's
you
like,
will.
yeah, or somebody that's like, well, I want to work here. I'm going to apply for fishing, but oh, we have an opening in archery. Oh, I shot a bow when I was a kid. Okay, you're now the archery expert.
You're in.
Yeah,
Yep.
you're in. They just needed a body, and I've
Yes.
done that when I've gone out to Cabela's where I used to work. I try to remember not wear tan because they would think I worked there. And I actually sold a crossbow one time to this guy. It's like I went to him, it's like he's ready to buy. Go down there and ring him up. Yeah,
I love
he had questions and I just started helping him. I
that.
didn't care.
That that in my experience is archery. The folks of us that really pour our brain into it. I love that. I love finding people that are just getting into it or just have that drive, that interest in it. I'll pour as much knowledge as you'll let me pour into you.
Yeah,
You ask all the questions you want, and I feel like a lot of us techs are like that.
yeah. I know when my wife goes me to Cabela's, she don't like me to go down to archery too much because I'll end up either teaching the guy that's supposed to know what's going on, or helping somebody down there, and just kind of like, and then come out, it's like, you need help. No, I just need to unlock that case so I can get to this release I want to try. And
Yeah,
like, I probably forgot more than you'll ever know. So,
yeah, yeah.
hey,
You
I'll
guys are my
talk to a little
favorite.
bit, and I'll talk a little bit and then figure out, it's like, okay, no, I just need them to ring it up or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you don't ring them up down at that area. You have to go to the main exit anyway to buy it. So
yeah.
I just need you.
Yep.
I just need unlock the case. I want this release or whatever it is.
Yeah. You guys are my favorite people to talk to. You guys that have been shooting since, like you said, before compounds were around. I've got a local tech that he's the same way. It's actually my boss's cousin, but if I don't know what's going on or I get confused or if I have any questions whatsoever, especially when I first started, I'd send him a message or give him a ring and you go, oh, well, you shooting this bow and it's doing this. Well, try to twist this up or try to move your rest this way, or just he immediately knew where to start pushing me in that right direction. And you guys are, like you said, you've forgotten more about archery than what I'll probably ever know, just because you've been around since the inception.
Yeah, or even the old steel cable bows. Bows
Oh
had
yeah.
steel cables on them.
Yep.
I've actually made those cables.
Have you? That's actually kind of cool. That's that's probably my most heartbreaking thing anytime someone brings one of those in and they go, I just found this at a pawn shop or I got this at a yard sale. I want to try out archery. Can you get it shooting for me again? And I go, yeah, you paid $20 for this? Yeah, it's gonna cost 200 to get some new strings and cables on it. And they go, oh. And I'm like, well, these steel cables are, 10 plus years old. They probably need to get changed. Uh, the string is, definitely 10 years old, definitely needs to get changed. Just to build the strings, 60, $80, guys. And they go, oh, well, I don't want to invest that much money into a 20-year-old bow. That's why I'm telling you.
And the steel cables, you're not finding them
Nope.
unless you find somebody that has some left. I have I actually come across some cables that were on some wheels from an old PSE.
Hmm.
Um, Last time I heard of any of them for sale, they were $100 a piece just
Yeah.
for the blank cable.
Yeah.
You have to make two of them. So that's 200 because you can't just make one because they have to be
Yep.
exactly the same. If
Yep.
you're more than a 16th of an inch off, you got to remake one of them
Yep.
because you can't twist the steel cables.
Nope.
And then you're going to have to pay somebody that knows how to do it. So you're looking at $200 for materials. You're probably going to look at paying me at least 300 or 400 to make them. Because if I mess up a cable, I got to try and find another one.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it and take a chance of losing money because I couldn't make the cables. So
Yeah.
you're looking probably $500. You can buy a starter kit for $500 all day
Yeah.
long. New ones.
Yep. Yep. Brand new with a warranty.
You're right.
And it's a lot faster, it's a lot more efficient, it's a lot quieter, it's got less vibration. There's a million different selling factors to just suck it up and buy the new bow.
Yeah.
It's, that is probably the most heartbreaking moment of being inside of a shop, though, is telling that customer that just wants to try it, that they threw $30 away at a yard sale.
Yeah. Now, if the steel cables are okay, then you could probably get by a little bit, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I got a friend of mine that when her grandma died, there was a bow for some reason, an old bow, and it had the string had broke, and the one cable is actually off the cam. I'm going to put it back in, and I'll probably do a video on this, put on my YouTube channel of
Yeah.
me going through, showing what's wrong with it and then making a string for it. Because I got stuff to make strings, so I just make a string so at least it's together.
Yeah.
Probably never pull it back, just because I don't know if they can because they're plastic cams. I don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
they would. I don't know if they'd even take being shot because there's enough worn over on them and a little bit of the cam missing. But just put it
Yeah.
back together, clean it up, and it's okay. It's a decoration to hang on the wall.
Yeah. It's a
That's
piece of
all it
wall
would
art.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crank it down
Great.
and make the string so it's not much weight on it, so it's not gonna like it's gonna, you know, the string could be on there for years and
Yeah.
not ever having a problem with it.
Those are
But
awesome pieces to just hang up in an archery shop or, just a man cave or something.
yeah,
Yeah, I've got an
yeah,
old PSE with the steel cables hanging up in my man cave. One of
yeah.
those ones that everybody spray painted the homemade camo on.
Oh yeah. Well, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah,
Um,
you too.
when you get ready to set up your bow fishing bow, let's get on here and we'll do one of these on just setting up bow fishing stuff sometime.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that.
Yeah, yeah. Just get a hold of me when you're ready to set it up, and So stay tuned. Watch. You never know when we'll record that one and put that one out too.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks for having me on, Roy. It's
Yeah,
been a
yeah.
pleasure.
Nice talking to you, and we'll catch you later, and we'll see everybody on the next one.